TIFU by using a username for 15 years that unknowingly linked me to extremists. So, I just had a major facepalm moment, and it's been a long time coming apparently. I've been using the username Soundman1488 across the internet for literally 15 plus years. Never thought twice about it, just sounded kinda cool and related to my audio interests, right? Wrong, dead wrong. Turns out, thanks to a lovely ban from our Ask Reddit, which I now understand kinda, I discovered the 1488 part of my username is apparently a well-known numerical symbol used by some extremist groups. I had absolutely no clue. Seriously, I was just picking random numbers. Ignorance is bliss, I guess, until it gets you banned. After posting about my confusion on another subreddit, and even jokingly changing my display name to something self-deprecating about accidentally having a Nazi birthday, which in hindsight maybe wasn't the best joke, but I was trying to make light of the situation, our Ask Reddit actually unbanned me. I thought, okay, lesson learned, weird internet moment over. Nope. My post about this whole username fiasco actually blew up, like way more attention than I ever expected. And with that attention came a 3-day suspension from Reddit itself for ban evasion, because apparently even mentioning the r Ask Reddit ban was a no-no. Fair enough, rules are rules. But the real kicker happened this morning. I checked back on my post and somehow someone had gone in and edited it to include a whole bunch of vile, hateful garbage. Racist slurs, homophobic insults, even violent threats. It was absolutely disgusting. And I swear on everything, it wasn't me. I wouldn't write that stuff if you paid me. I know some people are going to say I'm lying, or that it was some elaborate stunt for attention. Honestly, I get it. If I saw this, I'd be skeptical too, but I swear to you, this was not me. My intention was just to share a genuinely ridiculous and embarrassing situation. Some internet troll, for reasons I can't fathom, decided to hijack my post and turn it into something awful. I take responsibility for what happens on my account, and I am so incredibly sorry for anyone who saw that horrible edited version. Those words do not represent me in any way. If you're curious and want some kind of proof, you can probably dig through my post history on another subreddit where I was initially asking about the username thing. You can also look at my comment history here and on my new account to see that I'm not the type of person who would spew that kind of hate. Honestly, this whole experience has been a nightmare. I just wanted to share a silly internet blunder, and it turned into this giant mess. I'm seriously considering just deleting everything and disappearing from Reddit entirely. This whole thing has just left a really bad taste in my mouth, and I'm just so incredibly sorry to anyone who was offended or hurt by those awful edits to my post. It wasn't me, and I wish I could personally apologize to everyone who had to see that garbage. Oh man, talk about an internet deep dive you never asked for. 15 years with a username and bam, Nazi connotations. It's like the internet's playing a prank and you're the punchline. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had an online TIFU moment. TIFU by joking about a divorce announcement on April Fool's Day. Okay, I need to preface this whole story by laying the blame squarely at the feet of Reddit. You collectively have ruined me for April Fool's Day. Years of internet pranks and elaborate hoaxes have completely warped my sense of reality on April 1st, and this week it spectacularly backfired. So, yesterday I received a group text from my wife, Sarah's family. It was a rather dramatic message about an emergency family meeting that evening at my mother-in-law Barb's house. My immediate reaction? April Fool's alarm bells started ringing like crazy. We hadn't all been together since Christmas, which seemed a bit unusual, but the emergency part just screamed prank to my overly sensitized brain. Still, family is family, so my wife and I said we'd be there. We were the last to arrive at Barb's, and the atmosphere was heavy, like a lead balloon had just dropped in the living room. Everyone was sitting around looking somber. We all took our seats at the dining table, and then Sarah's brother Tim dropped a bombshell. He announced in a very serious tone that his wife Ashley had been having an affair and they were getting divorced. And to make it even more soap opera worthy, the affair was with Chris, a longtime close family friend who lived just down the street. Apparently Chris's wife Jen had come home early from work last week and walked in on Ashley and Chris in a compromising situation. Jen then, understandably, broke the news to Tim. The fallout has been immense. Both families have been intertwined for years, practically inseparable. They live a stone's throw from each other. Both couples have been married for over 15 years, and they each have 4 kids who are all roughly the same age. Honestly, from the outside looking in, they both seemed like the epitome of perfect families. Just 2 weeks ago, all 8 of them, parents and kids, were at our house for a barbecue, laughing and joking like nothing was amiss. After the initial shock announcement, the dinner conversation devolved into airing a lot of incredibly personal and painful details. They discussed the timeline of the affair, the logistics of the divorce, how it would impact future family gatherings, the whole messy, heartbreaking thing. Then Tim opened the floor for questions from the rest of the family. A heavy silence descended upon the room, and that's when my April Fool's Day conditioned brain completely short-circuited in what I can only describe as a spectacular display of tone deafness. I broke the silence with a burst of laughter and a slow clap. Yes, you read that right. A slow clap. I genuinely thought this was some elaborate, albeit cruel, April Fool's prank. I announced with what I thought was playful sarcasm that this was the best April Fool's gag I'd ever seen, and that I wasn't falling for it. I even had the audacity to suggest that Ashley and Tim should consider careers in acting because their performances were top-notch and the tears seemed so genuine. Being the relatively new addition to the family, Sarah and I have only been married for 6 months. This was, in retrospect, a monumental blunder. Actually, blunder is a massive understatement. It was a social atomic bomb. The reaction was instantaneous and universally horrified. Every single person in the room stared at me like I'd sprouted a second head. My mother-in-law, who had been visibly upset and crying throughout the entire announcement, completely lost it. She burst into uncontrollable sobs and fled the room, not to be seen again before we awkwardly made our exit. Tim just shook his head in stunned silence. And Ashley, the cheating wife herself, actually let out a short, incredulous chuckle before launching into a tirade about what a dumbass I was for thinking this was a joke and how incredibly insensitive I was being. The rest of the family sat in stunned silence, shaking their heads in disbelief as my own wife proceeded to tear into me for trying to make a joke out of a serious situation. I'm still reeling from the sheer magnitude of my screw-up. In hindsight, silence would have been golden, platinum even. But in that moment, my brain, warped by years of internet trickery and April Fool's Day paranoia, genuinely convinced me I was witnessing an elaborate prank. I still feel a little bit like I'm living in some bizarre, unfunny April Fool's joke myself. I have a very, very long road ahead of me to repair the damage I inflicted at that dinner table. TIFU, by accidentally muting myself from Reddit for an entire year. Today I had the facepalm moment of the century, realizing I've been utterly clueless for the past 12 months. For a solid year, I genuinely believed my Reddit content had just become incredibly uninteresting, and that's why I was getting zero engagement. Let me explain. For the last year, I've been diligently commenting on other people's posts, crafting my own original posts, pouring my heart and soul, or at least my witty thoughts, into the Reddit void. And for a year, I haven't received a single upvote, not one reply, nothing. My karma count has been stubbornly stuck at 885 for what feels like forever. Naturally, I started to assume the worst. My jokes were bombing, my insights were dull, I was simply contributing nothing of value to the Reddit community. It was a slow, ego-bruising realization that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as interesting as I thought I was, still a distinct possibility to be fair. Then, last month, a seed of doubt started to sprout. I decided to try viewing my own posts through guest accounts just to see if they were even visible. That's when the penny finally dropped and I realized my posts were completely invisible to anyone but myself. Yet, on my own account, I could still see everything I wrote, my comments, my posts, all there just in my own little digital bubble. It was like living in my own personal Truman Show of Reddit. So finally, after a year of silent posting, I decided to reach out to the Reddit help team, and guess what? Turns out, my IP address had somehow gotten accidentally tangled up in a sweep to remove spammers. Apparently, I was collateral damage in the fight against the bots. The good news is, if you're reading this, it means they've sorted it out, and I'm back in the land of the visible. Though, if you're not reading this, well, I'm still happily chatting away to myself in my own little Reddit universe. If you're currently procrastinating from something important, and let's be honest, you probably are, feel free to take a deep dive into my post history and witness the year-long chronicle of completely unreciprocated online interaction. It's a truly fascinating study in internet solitude. In short, I was accidentally muted on Reddit a year ago and was too oblivious to notice. For 12 months, I wandered the digital plains, convinced of my own utter lack of online charisma because nobody seemed to acknowledge my existence. Lesson learned: if you're shouting into the void and hearing only silence, maybe check if you're actually muted before you start questioning your entire online persona. A whole year of silent posting? That's next level oblivious. Imagine the digital ghost town they thought they were in. TIFU by telling my son to handle his bully. My youngest son was born with a condition called pectus excavatum, basically meaning his chest was quite caved in. It was pretty severe. There were only a couple of inches between his sternum and spine, and it was actually impacting his heart and lungs. Last December, he had surgery to correct it, where they inserted 2 metal bars in his chest to push it out and encourage his bones to grow correctly. It was a pretty big deal for him. Fast forward about 3 weeks post-surgery, and another kid, not realizing the situation, playfully punched him in the chest. Unfortunately, this was enough to dislodge one of the bars, and he had to go back in for another surgery to have it reinserted. Poor kid had been through the ringer. Anyway, just last week the doctor finally cleared him for most activities, with the exception of things like skateboarding or bike riding, but he could carry his backpack, hang out with friends, and even play light non-contact sports. What I didn't know was that a kid in his class had been bullying him pretty consistently throughout the semester, and because my son was understandably nervous about getting hit again after his surgeries, he'd just been taking it. Well, the very evening he got cleared by the doctor, he came to me looking serious and asked, Dad, I'm cleared now. Like, this kid has been bullying me and hitting me for months. Can I finally do something about it? Now, my son isn't really a fighter. He's had his fair share of roughhousing with his brothers, but he's never been in a real fight with anyone else, and honestly, he usually ends up on the losing side in brotherly squabbles. So I initially thought he was just venting, but this was the first I was hearing about the bullying, and I was genuinely concerned. He was clearly upset and frustrated, so in a moment of parental impulsiveness, I told him, maybe a bit too enthusiastically, to go knock the wind out of him. He just nodded, a determined look on his face, and went off to his room. Later that evening, I spoke to his older brother, who is, shall we say, a bit more physically robust. He's actually in the same grade as my younger son because he had a traumatic brain injury a couple of years ago and missed a year of school. I mentioned the bullying situation, thinking maybe the older brother could subtly intervene. He then casually dropped the bombshell that this bully walks into class every single day and just punches my younger son in the head. Every single day. I asked him, incredulous, why he hadn't stepped in. His reasoning? He wanted his younger brother to learn to stand up for himself, to reach a point where he was finally fed up with being a punching bag and would do something about it. While I could see a sliver of logic in his twisted brotherly tough love approach, I told him to keep an eye on things and maybe find a less hands-off way to handle it without getting himself into trouble. The next morning, I drove both boys to school before heading back home to get my younger daughter ready for her later start at a different school. On the way to dropping her off, my wife calls, sounding slightly panicked. Have you taken son's name to school yet? Well, after you drop your daughter, you need to go back and pick him up. He got into a fight. My first thought, naturally, was that my older son had gotten involved trying to protect his younger brother. Imagine my utter surprise when I walked into the school office to find my younger son sitting there grinning from ear to ear like he just won the lottery. He was practically radiating pride. He pointed across the room to another kid sitting in a chair, holding an ice pack to his face. My son simply stated with a completely unrepentant shrug, I warned him. Turns out he'd walked into class, sat down at his desk, and as usual the bully had popped him in the head. But this time, instead of flinching, my son had apparently unleashed a lightning-fast punch that decked the bully in one shot. He said the kid was on the floor crying and that it was, in his words, the best day of his life. He did get a 3-day suspension, but honestly, seeing that grin, it was almost worth it. So yeah, TIFU by giving my son permission to handle his bully, not really expecting him to actually do it, and now he's serving a well-deserved and surprisingly joyful suspension. He told his son to handle it and bam, knockout punch. That suspension grin is everything. Was telling him to fight back bad parenting or justified? What do you think parents should do in this situation? TIFU by keeping a harmless gummy bear secret from my wife for 13 years. So I messed up, but in a really silly, long con kind of way. It all revolves around gummy bears and my wife's aversion to certain flavors. You see, my wife is not a fan of orange and lime flavored candies. Me, I happen to love orange, and I'm pretty okay with lime. This flavor preference has been a minor, ongoing theme in our relationship for the past 13 years. Whenever we have a bag of assorted candies, she automatically filters out the orange and lime flavored ones for me. Orange Starburst, all mine. Orange and green Skittles, pass my way. Orange and green gummy bears, you guessed it, she hands them right over. It's been this sweet, slightly quirky little routine for over a decade. Here's the kicker and where my TIFU comes in. She's been unknowingly handing me her favorite flavor of Haribo gummy bears this whole time, thinking they were lime. Because, and this is crucial to the story, the green Haribo gummy bears are actually strawberry flavored. Shortly after we got married, for some random reason, I happened to glance at the back of a Haribo gummy bear bag. There, in plain English, was the flavor breakdown, and that's when I discovered the green gummy bear deception. Strawberry, not lime. Now here's where my mistake, or maybe my genius, depending on how you look at it, began. I didn't say a word, not a peep. For 13 years, every time we had gummy bears, she diligently sorted out the orange and lime, strawberry ones, and gave them to me. And for 13 years, I've silently enjoyed my little delicious lie, munching on strawberry gummy bears disguised as lime rejects, until last night. Last night the gummy bear facade crumbled. We had a bag of gummy bears, and as usual, she opened them up and started sorting, handing me the orange and green ones. But then, after a few minutes, I noticed her staring intently at the back of the bag. I saw her eyes widen, like cartoonishly wide. She slowly turned to me, a look of dawning comprehension, mixed with a hint of disbelief spreading across her face. She asked in a very measured tone if I had known this whole time that the green gummy bears were actually strawberry, that she had always thought they were lime. In that moment, honesty seemed like the only viable path. I nodded, perhaps a little too enthusiastically. The look of betrayal that followed was truly something to behold. It was as if I had confessed to a major crime, not a minor gummy bear flavor conspiracy. She demanded to know how long I had known, and again I confessed the full extent of my deception. Since shortly after we were married, the gummy bear gravy train, as you might imagine, has now come to a screeching halt. She immediately stopped giving me the gummy bears she didn't like. In fact, she started eating the orange ones herself, out of what I can only assume was pure, unadulterated spite. I highly doubt I'll be receiving any more gummy bear discards in the future. Looks like it's time for me to start buying my own bags of Haribo. 13 years of free strawberry gummy bears, and it was a good run while it lasted. 13 years of gummy bear lies, all for strawberry? Respect. Wife's orange revenge is pure TIFU gold. Subscribe for more hilarious stories and have a great rest of your day.